Montana Territory, spring of 1879. The wind off the Bitterroot Mountains howled through the slats of the old barn, and in the hayloft, Olivia Sutton didn't make a sound. She lay curled on her side, cradling the still weight of her newborn against her chest. The baby girl had never cried. Never opened her eyes, just come into the world quiet and gone just as quick. The birth had been sudden, brutal. No midwife. No help. Just Olivia's own trembling hands in the dark and the barn cat watching from the rafters. She had stumbled up here alone 2 nights ago after the pain had started in the middle of the field and no one came for her. Not her sister-in-law, not her brother, not even when she screamed. She had thought maybe they would come after they realized the baby was dead. After they realized she was bleeding, but no one did, so she stayed. 2 days now, weak, barely moving. The baby wrapped in her shawl held close to her chest. She did not cry, she did not speak. She just breathed in the smell of hay and her child's skin and waited for the pain to finish what it started. Then the barn door creaked open, bootsteps. Slow, cautious. The floorboards groaned under weight. "Hello?" A man called up into the loft. She did not answer. "I saw smoke from a ways off," he said, voice low, steady. "Came to see if the place was abandoned." Still, she said nothing. Her arms tightened around the little bundle, more steps. Then a face appeared over the edge of the loft, a man, maybe 30, with a weathered face and dark hair curling out from under his hat. His eyes swept the space, then found her in the corner, surrounded by hay and silence. "Jesus," he breathed, removing his hat. She blinked at him. "My name's Declan Kersey," he said gently. "I'm not here to hurt you." She didn't speak. He climbed up carefully, hands out to show he meant no harm. "Are you alone?" Finally, she nodded. Just once, he crouched beside her, eyes landing on the small shape in her arms. "I'm sorry," he said, voice barely a whisper, her lips parted. "She never cried." Declan swallowed hard. "What's your name?" "Olivia," she said. "Olivia Sutton, you're hurt, I know." He looked around the loft, then back at her. "Let me help, please." She stared at him for a long moment. Then she nodded again, slower this time. He moved fast after that. Got water from the well, tore up his spare shirt for bandages, helped her clean up as best she could. He never touched her without asking, never rushed her. When she shook too hard to hold the baby, he gently took the bundle and wrapped her tighter, laying her in a wooden crate lined with hay. That night, he made a fire in the barn and stayed close, but not too close. Olivia lay on a pile of blankets, eyes open to the rafters. "She was going to be named Penelope," she said. Declan looked at her from across the flames. "That's a good name." She had dark hair, like my father. "You want me to bury her?" Olivia turned her face to him. "You would do that," he nodded. "Of course." Tears came finally, not loud, not wild. Just quiet streams down her cheeks. "I could not save her," she whispered. He came to her side, knelt down, and took her hand. "You tried, you carried her, you loved her. That makes you a mother, Olivia." She looked at him, broken and raw. "Not anymore. You are still a mother to me," he said, voice thick. "You always will be." She broke then, leaning into him. He held her with both arms, strong and steady, her face buried in his shirt, sobbing for the first time since the baby came. The next morning, they buried Penelope beneath the cottonwood tree behind the barn. Declan carved her name into a flat stone. Olivia placed a small pine cone beside it. She did not say much, just knelt there a while, eyes closed, lips moving in silent prayer. Afterward, Declan helped her into the saddle of his bay mare. "You cannot stay here," he said. "Whoever left you like that, they do not deserve you." "My brother," she said softly. "He said I was a burden now, after my husband died in the flood last winter." Declan's jaw tightened. "You are not a burden." He took her to his homestead just outside Hamilton. A small cabin nestled in the trees, a barn, a garden plot still waiting for spring. He gave her his bed, slept on the floor the first night. Second night, she told him he did not have to. On the third night, she reached for his hand. He held it. She healed slow. Her body first, then her heart. Declan never pushed. Just brought her tea in the mornings, let her sit beside him on the porch as he whittled or repaired tack. One afternoon, she helped him hang laundry, the sun warm on her face. "I used to think I would never feel anything good again after I lost her," she said. He looked at her, his eyes soft. "Do you feel something good now?" She nodded. "When I am with you." His hand brushed hers, gentle. "I feel it too." That night she kissed him. He kissed her back, long and slow, no rush, just need and comfort and something deeper building between them. She rested her head against his chest. "I am scared." "So am I," he said, "but I am here." And he always was. By late May, the high ridges around the valley still held onto their snowcaps, but the cottonwoods had leafed out, soft and green against the deep pine. The garden rows behind Declan's cabin were taking to the seed beans twisting up string, turnip tops poking through dark soil. Olivia knelt in the dirt with a trowel and a bucket of sprouted onions, her sleeves rolled to the elbow and her hair pulled back with a scrap of muslin. Her hands, though thinner than before, moved with quiet purpose. Declan came up from the creek trail with a brace of trout strung over one shoulder and his coat tied around his waist. "You been out here long?" "Since the sun hit the porch rail," she said. "Figured if I waited much longer the roots would dry out." He stepped closer and crouched beside her, setting the fish down. "You're planting in straight lines." "I like order," she said, brushing a streak of soil across her skirt. "It makes things quieter in my head." He didn't ask what she meant. He just nodded once, then started loosening the earth beside her with his hands. They worked in rhythm, side by side, the only sounds the scrape of soil and the breeze pushing through the aspen leaves. When they reached the edge of the row, she sat back on her heels and pressed the heel of her hand to her lower back. "How's it feel today?" he asked, glancing at her with a quiet concern that had no edge to it. "Sore," she said. "But not bad. You still waking up in the night?" "Not last night." He gave a small nod. "That's good." She looked at him then, her brow slightly drawn. "You're always listening close." He wiped his hands on his trousers. "I don't want to miss what matters." She stood, brushing the dirt from her skirt with long, steady sweeps. "You don't talk much about yourself." "I reckon I've never seen the need to." "I'd like to know where you came from." He hesitated, then rose to his feet. "Wyoming side of the Bighorns." "My father ran cattle till he drank the land dry. My mother left when I was 9. I rode fence for other men until I could save enough to buy this place." "Do you miss it?" "Where you're from?" He looked out across the slope where the fields met the tree line. "No." There wasn't much to miss. She studied him for a moment, then turned toward the cabin. "Come wash up. I'll fry the fish." Inside, she stoked the stove while he washed at the basin. When he dried his hands and took the fish from the counter, she stepped aside without a word, and he cleaned them with methodical hands. She dredged them in cornmeal and salt, then laid them gently into the skillet. As the fish sizzled, she leaned against the edge of the table and watched the fire flicker behind the stove grate. "Sometimes I think I see her, in the corner of my eye when I wake up before dawn." Declan didn't interrupt. He just turned the fish and waited. "It's not frightening," she said. "It's a softness, like she's only just stepped out of the room." "I think the ones we lose find ways to stay with us," he said. She turned then, eyes searching his face. "Do you believe in that?" "I do," he said. "Not because someone told me. Just because I've felt it." They ate in quiet, the windows open to the sound of the wind in the trees. Afterward, she gathered the plates and he carried the basin out back to empty it. When he came in again, she was standing by the hearth, her hands clasped in front of her. "I want to make something for her," she said. "A quilt maybe with pieces from things I wore while I carried her." He stepped closer. "Do you have the cloth?" "I've been saving bits. From that blue dress, the apron with the torn hem." "I can help," he offered. "You don't sew?" "I can hold a needle," he said, "and I want to be part of it." She looked at him for a long moment. "All right." He smiled just a little and she looked down, her fingers twisting in the fabric of her skirt. "I think sometimes I'm afraid to let new things grow," she said. "Like something in me still thinks I don't deserve them." He reached for her hand, slow and careful. "You deserve every good thing that comes your way. That's not a question in my mind." Her mouth pressed into a line and then softened. You make it easier to believe that. He didn't answer right away, just stepped closer, his hand still around hers. When he spoke, his voice was quiet. If you ever feel ready, I'd like to build something with you, a life, not all at once, just steady. Like planting onions in straight rows. She lifted her eyes to his, and for a long moment neither of them moved, then she nodded, her voice barely audible. Steady sounds right. He drew her into his arms and she leaned against him with her eyes closed. No urgency. Just the warmth of his chest and the slow, sure beat of his heart beneath her ear. Outside, the light stretched long across the valley and the first stars blinked into the sky. By late June, the wild roses along the edge of the pasture had opened in soft blushes, their scent drifting on the breeze that swept down from the mountains. Olivia stood at the porch rail with a pair of shears in hand, and her bare feet tucked beneath her skirt. The hem fluttered against her ankles as she watched Declan guide the roan toward the barn, a newly felled pine lashed to the travois behind the saddle. He dismounted, brushing sawdust from his sleeves. That beam'll do fine for the roof frame on the shed. She nodded, her gaze lingering on the sweat-darkened collar of his shirt. You've been out since first light. I wanted to get it done before the sun sat too high. He looked up at her, squinting slightly. You slept late. I dreamed, she said after a pause. It didn't wake me. He set the reins over the hitching post and stepped toward her. You remember it, not the whole of it, just a white dress hanging on the line. And the sound of children laughing down by the creek. He rested a hand lightly on the porch post. Sounds like the kind of dream that leaves something behind. She gave a faint smile. It felt like a memory I haven't lived yet. Declan didn't speak, but the look in his eyes was steady, thoughtful. Inside the cabin later that day, Olivia unfolded a square of muslin across the table and began arranging scraps of fabric in a soft spiral pattern. Declan sat nearby, shaping a length of cedar with his drawknife, the shavings curling like ribbons to the floor. Did you ever think about having your own family? She asked without looking up. He paused, blade hovering over the wood. Not until I met you. She ran her fingers over a faded blue square. I used to picture a house near water with a little fenced garden, a rocking chair on the porch. You still could. I'm not sure how to begin again, she said. But I think I want to try. Declan set down the drawknife and stood. He walked to her side, quiet but sure, and looked down at the quilt taking shape. You already are. That evening, a wagon came up the trail, Mr. Harlan, an older neighbor from across the ridge with a crate of early peaches and a bundle of letters from town. Olivia met him at the fence while Declan finished hitching the gate. She's looking better by the day, Harlan said, tipping his hat. She's strong, Declan replied. They exchanged a few words about the weather and the condition of the trail beyond the ridge. Then Harlan tipped his hat again and rolled on. Back inside, Olivia opened one of the letters. It was from a midwife in Missoula, replying to the inquiry she'd penned 2 weeks earlier. She says there's a need for helpers, Olivia said, her voice steady. Midwives can't always reach the remote farms if the roads are bad. They're looking to train women who have had experience. Declan wiped his hands on a cloth. Is that something you want? I think it is. He crossed the room slowly and pressed a hand to her shoulder. You'd carry that work with care. I know what it is to cry alone in the dark, she said softly. Maybe I could be the one who knocks on a door before it's too late. That night, she folded the letter and tucked it into the small wooden box where her shawl lay, the one that had wrapped Penelope. Then she sat beside Declan on the porch, the sky above them streaked with the last blush of day. I used to think love was something fixed, she said. Like a door you walked through once, but now I think it can be built little by little. He turned toward her, his voice quiet. You and me, we're building it. Piece by piece. She leaned her head against his shoulder and he rested his cheek atop her hair. I want to marry you, he said. She didn't lift her head. You're not asking? No, he said. I'm saying it because it's true. She took his hand, laced her fingers through his. Then say it again. I want to marry you. She closed her eyes, the wind soft through the trees. Then we will. And they did. By mid-July, the sun pressed down heavy across the valley, and the dirt paths between cabin and barn turned to fine dust beneath their boots. Olivia stood barefoot on the flat stone beside the creek where she laundered linens, her skirts tucked up past her knees, and her arms sunk to the elbows in cool water. She scrubbed in long, slow strokes, the rhythm steady, her face tipped toward the shade where alder branches dipped low. Declan had taken the mule and cart down to the mill that morning, hauling rough cut planks for trade. He'd left before sunrise, a wrapped loaf of bread and a folded note beside the pitcher she'd filled the night before. She hadn't unfolded the paper. She didn't need to. She knew his handwriting now, the way he shaped her name like he was saying it aloud. A dragonfly skimmed past her ear, and she paused, watching it hover above the rush grass. Then she wrung the last cloth and laid it over the line beside the others, the damp cotton flapping gently in the breeze. Inside the cabin, the air held a quiet hush. She moved to the cedar chest at the foot of their bed, lifting the lid to reveal the quilt in progress, now nearly half-stitched. The spiral pattern had begun to bloom outward, no longer tight and mournful but open, reaching. She ran her palm lightly over the seams, then folded it closed and stowed it again. Later, she saddled the buckskin mare and rode the narrow path that wound upward into the hills behind the pasture. It was a trail Declan had shown her, cut by deer and softened by years of wind and hooves. She took it slow, the mare patient beneath her, until she reached the rocky outcrop that overlooked the valley floor. She dismounted and sat on the flat stone with her knees drawn up, eyes sweeping the land below fields in patchwork greens, the glint of the creek winding east, the chimney smoke curling from their roof. For a long while she said nothing, just breathed in the pine-sweet air and let the silence settle around her like a shawl. When she came back down just before dusk, Declan was unloading a small bundle from the cart bed. She stepped down from the mare and walked to him, brushing grit from her skirt. "You were longer than you said," she said, lifting an edge of the sack he carried. "They had a delay at the mill," he said, "and I stopped at the trading post. There was something I wanted you to have." He handed her a wrapped parcel, cloth tied with twine. She untied it slowly, revealing a set of wooden cards, each carved with a different letter, smoothed at the edges and finished with oil. She looked up, brows drawn. "What are these for?" "For the children you'll help," he said. "You said they might not read. Thought you could use something to teach them." She turned a card over in her hand. "You carved these." "Took a few nights in the barn," he said. "Didn't want to say anything until I had enough." Her voice caught. "You remembered that." "I listen," he said. "Even when you think I'm not." She stepped into him then, her face pressed to the crook of his neck, and he wrapped his arms around her without a word. That evening, as they sat out under the stars, a soft breeze stirring the cottonwoods, she reached for his hand. "There was a time I thought I wouldn't belong anywhere again," she said. "Not to anyone. You belong to yourself first," he said. "But if you want, I'd be proud to be the one you share that with." "I do want," she said. "I want you to be my home." He kissed her there under the wide Montana sky, their hands still twined, the air carrying the scent of warm earth and sweet clover. And this time she didn't flinch from the softness in it. She let it bloom. August settled slow and golden over the valley, the days warm enough to leave the windows open, and the nights just cool enough to pull the quilt up over their shoulders. Olivia woke to the sound of a hawk crying from the ridge in Declan's hand, resting loose across her waist, his breath steady against her shoulder. She stayed still, watching the early light stretch across the pine floorboards, listening to the hush that came with being known and not needing words. By mid-morning she was in the garden, her skirt hem damp with dew, a basket looped over her arm. The tomatoes had come in all at once, heavy on the vines and sun warm in her hands. She picked until the basket was full, then paused at the edge of the fence to watch Declan as he lifted the last beam into place on the new shed. His shirt hung from a nail nearby, his back browned from weeks of sun, the muscles in his arms moving with quiet precision. She waited until he stepped down from the ladder before calling out. "You ever stop?" He walked over, brushing sawdust from his trousers. "If I stop, something doesn't get finished." She tilted her head. "And if everything did get finished, what would you do then?" "Sit with you a while longer." She handed him the basket. "Then take these inside. I'll boil them for preserving. You can sit with me while the jars seal." Inside the kitchen, the stove was already hot. She blanched and peeled while he packed the jars, his hands careful, his movements slow beside hers. "I got a letter from the midwife in Missoula," she said, wiping her hands on a cloth. "She says there's a woman due in October up past Trout Creek. She's asked if I'd be willing to ride out and stay a few days." Declan looked over, the lid of a jar held loosely in his fingers. "You want to go?" "I think so. You'll need someone to ride with you." "I thought of that," she said. "Beth Harlan's eldest girl, Clara, she's been helping with her mother's deliveries since spring. She said she'd come." He nodded, fitting the lid. "You'll take the buckskin. She's good on mountain trails." She reached for the next tomato. "I could leave the day after the harvest fair." He ran a thumb along the rim of the jar. "You've been looking forward to that." "I have," she said, smiling. "I've been sewing a dress. Something with sleeves I don't have to roll." They worked in thoughtful quiet, the stove ticking as the heat built. By afternoon, the shelves held 3 neat rows of jars, and the house smelled of basil and vinegar. That evening, they walked the trail down to the creek, not for washing or work, but just to let the air move over their skin and the hush of water fill the spaces between their words. She slipped her hand into his as they stepped over roots and mossy stones. "I used to think the world was something I had to brace myself against," she said. He looked down at their joined hands. "And now it feels like something I can step into with you." He stopped and turned to face her. "There's something I wanted to ask." She watched him, steady. "Go on." He reached into his pocket and drew out a simple ring of braided gold, no stone, no flourish, just a smooth circle, shaped careful and worn bright from his touch. "I want to marry you before autumn comes," he said. "We don't need a preacher if you'd rather not wait." She stared at the ring, then at him. "Yes," his breath caught. "You're sure?" "I've never been more certain of anything." He took her hand and slid the ring onto her finger. It fit without resistance, like it had been waiting for her all along. They married 3 days before the harvest fair. Clara brought wildflowers from her family's meadow, and Mr. Harlan carved a bench for the ceremony and set it beside the cottonwood tree behind the cabin. Olivia wore the dress she'd sewn, pale green with neat cuffs and a row of mother-of-pearl buttons down the front. Declan wore his Sunday shirt and his father's watch tucked into his vest. They said their vows in the hush of late afternoon, the light soft through the branches, and when it was done, they didn't rush. They sat on the bench and passed around cider, and when the last neighbor had gone, Olivia leaned into Declan's side and rested there. That night, as the heat fell away and the stars blinked open above the roof, they lay curled beneath the quilt she'd finished just in time. The spiral pattern stretched across the bed like a trail of memory, each piece stitched with the days that had brought them here. "I want to build more," she whispered, her voice thick with certainty. "More quilts, more moments, maybe even more children if they come." Declan brushed a hand over her hair, his fingers gentle. "Whatever comes, we'll walk through it together," and they did. In the years that followed, Olivia delivered babies in cabins and sod houses, in snowstorms and high summer heat. She carried a satchel filled with herbs, bandages, and the carved alphabet cards Declan had made. Children watched her from behind skirts and fence rails, and when they met her eyes, they saw calm. Declan built furniture that lasted, mended tools for neighbors who brought jars of jam and sacks of flour in trade. He never left the valley again. He never needed to. They grew older with the land. Laughed at the same stories. Sat on their porch and watched their garden change with the seasons, and every night when the fire burned low and the hush of dusk settled around them, they reached for each other without thought, without fear. Just trust, just love. forever and always, in the quiet strength they had built together.